All right, we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome all of our eTourism Summit virtual 2020 fans here, and thank you all so much for dedicating an hour a day to focusing in on winning in 2020. It's been an extraordinary series so far, and I would really like to thank you for all of your participation. We've got an extraordinary keynote speaker today, and I would like to encourage you to over the course of the next 30 minutes or so, go ahead and include any Q&A and ask any questions, and we'll, after the presentation, we'll come back and address all those questions directly. I'd also like to just point out today that if you look at the public chat, there's a note there to allow you to register for our Flashback Fridays, which is a great opportunity for us all to share our feedback, everybody's feedback based on all the presentations over the course of the week. And Josh Collins from Street Sense will be moderating that and putting people into breakouts and making kind of engaging everybody, so you're not just listening to presentations, but rather participating in it as well. So today it's really my honor to welcome our keynote speaker. Brian Solis is a digital anthropologist and a futurist, a multi-best-selling author, and really focuses on kind of the relationship between disruption and innovation and its impacts on institutions, markets, and society. Brian is the global innovation evangelist at Salesforce, and we are very fortunate to have you here today, Brian, to share your thoughts on the future of the travel industry in this crazy time. So I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Will. And hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm wearing my favorite travel shirt, rich with Mickey Mouse in a variety of summer poses. And also I have my travel sunglasses here so that we can get into the mood, the future of travel, the future of tourism. I'm ready. Are you ready? Well, nothing says the future like PowerPoint slides. And so I'm going to share with you my screen, and let's walk through some of the latest and greatest. Will, just confirming that you can see my slides. Excellent. All right. Well, let's just jump into it. This is the present of travel and tourism, and this is a post-apocalyptic experience. This and plexiglass and masks and glasses and gloves and sanitizer. I mean, hey, whatever it takes to be safe and remain healthy. But what does the future look like? I thought about this as I was putting together this presentation because I thought, hey, no pressure. Let's just look at the future of tourism and just present it in a few slides, and we'll all get to nirvana together. And it was harder. It was harder than I thought it was. And just to be honest with you, because not only are times changing, so are we as individuals, as consumers, and that is exactly then where I realized where we should start with this presentation. Since March, my work at Salesforce has been hyper-focused on the consumer and how that consumer has changed, how you and I have changed since shelter in place. The reason is because all the research that I have done up until this moment, I mean, it still applies, but it really seemed outdated and also not terribly personal and real time. So I decided to shelve everything and start from scratch. And those insights that I've been able to get since March in the first 30, 60, 90, 120 days have been incredible. So that's where I started to build this discussion, was how have people changed? And then in turn, how can the future of tourism come to life through human-centered innovation as consumer preferences, behaviors, expectations, and aspirations evolve? One of the things that I had found in all of my research, especially in the future of tourism, was the next normal and the new normal. Those were two constantly referenced phases. For example, how soon until things get back to normal? Or what is the new normal? What is the next normal? I thought, gosh, the fact that we're using normal as this state of reference demonstrates part of the problem. I don't think this is a race towards normalcy. I don't think that normal is the standard of excellence at all. I think it's the minimum viable product. It's the minimum viable service. I think it's the ante to play the game. This is a time of great disruption, but also of great possibility. I'm a huge fan of the art of the possible. And that's what I want to share with you today is let's stoke some new ideas. Let's stoke some new products and services because COVID is both a disruptor and an accelerant of what was already starting to happen. I called it digital Darwinism, right? So you have technology evolving and you have society evolving. This has been happening for 20 years. It goes all the way back to the dawn of Internet 1.0, Amazon.com in the mid 90s. It also goes through every technological iteration and innovation phases. Think about mid 2000 with the launch of Facebook and Twitter, and then Uber, and then Airbnb. Think about the launch of the iPhone. Every single one of those things pushes society forward in an entirely new way. But what hasn't kept up with that has been business infrastructure, business models, business thinking, metrics, our beholdenness to shareholders and stakeholders. I get all of that. But at the same time, people change, people evolve, people's demands, their preferences, their expectations, their spending patterns, what they want to do, where they want to go. These things all continue to evolve. What happens over time is this creates an experience divide. As people change, businesses remain rigid, that creates this gap between how we do business, what we sell, how we service you, how we help you, how we connect and communicate with you, and then what they do, what they buy, the standards that they find to be exceptional, the companies that they love, the brands that they love. Over time, that gap gets bigger and bigger if we're not trying to change and evolve to be part of their life, to be part of their decisions, to be a pillar in their lifestyle. And as that gap gets bigger, that's where disruption happens. That's where startups come in, not just pandemics. That's where startups come in, competitors come in, new products and services aim at that experience divide because that actually is how a lot of companies determine where there is an opportunity, how investors determine where they want to put their money, because it shows that there's an opportunity to solve that gap. For those who know Ian Schrager, he's a hotelier. He's been a trailblazer in many, many ways. I've stayed at as many of his hotels as I could. He's been on the circuit lately. I don't know if you've seen any of his appearances, but he is touting optimism. I wanted to share some of the words that he had shared on Squawk Box, I believe it was, that he's not experienced any calamity, nor has the history of humanity where we haven't gone back to normal. There's that normal word again, after we've adjusted and made the appropriate changes. So I think there's a real pent-up demand, and he's right. I'm coming to you from Lake Tahoe, where I have been since, well, maybe June. And what I have seen here is unprecedented. I have never seen this place as packed, as busy, sold out everywhere. So I've stayed safe and kept my distance. However, it's been incredible. Today is Wednesday. Yesterday, I drove by a public beach, and it was packed. It was packed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or 5:30 in the afternoon, and that you just don't see that at this time. And so that pent up demand is pushing people domestically in places where they can go and feel safe while getting out outside while still traveling. So we know the demand is there. Now we just have to close the divide to create a path forward from where we are today to getting people back in planes, cars, cruise ships, trains, whatever it is, because the rest of the world is just too beautiful not to experience. I was doing some research and found this sort of common theme, this common thread of 3 to 5 phases or stages of tourism recovery. And I wanted to share that with you because that's kind of how the deck is built today. There's this crisis period, there's this pandemic recovery. So, living with the virus, learning how to operate, learning how to still generate engagement, how to generate sales, how to get people out. Then there's economic recovery. So, this is sort of an overlapping phase. So, more and more people start to become comfortable with traveling. This is happening, for example, in China and Europe, where it is with COVID. People are just taking extra precautions as they travel. But then there's also the post COVID phase, right? So, post COVID, let's just say vaccine. And vaccine is not overnight. It's going to take, uh, maybe at least 12 months for the world to establish its immunity. Then there's the period of great invention. So I actually see this, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, as happening at the same time, a little bit of overlap, right? So inspiring us to create new products and services, new travel solutions, new bundles, new partnerships, new ecosystems, so that we are starting to push that today, tomorrow, and then drive that next phase of surge in demand, right? So this is incredible growth. This isn't just recovery, this is growth. And then I did succumb to the next normal, but I also added the word evolved because I don't know if you realize this or not, but as we go through all of this stuff, as we learn, as we unlearn, as we change, we're sort of we're adopting the attributes of an agile company. So that means that we have to keep evolving as we go. I call these times the novel economy. And the novel economy is a framework for how we think and also how we move forward in both our productization, our customer engagement, our digital transformation. In the novel economy, I wanted to give a name to the new normal or the next normal. I wanted to make it tangible. And it was inspired by the novel coronavirus, obviously, because novel itself means new and unusual. So, for example, with the virus, just like tourism and the economy, there's no playbook. What do? There's no vaccine. How do we solve this right now? There are no case studies or best practices or checklists. This is literally a free for all. And while it's a free for all, and while we also had to think not only about how we survive in this economy, we also had to set up things differently in order to do so, like working from home, like, like e commerce. We'll talk about that too in a minute. But also for those parents, we also had to adapt for our children with remote learning. We had to learn how to survive as digital first consumers in order to get what we want and also be safe in the process. So the novel economy breaks out into 3 phases. Phase one, which is kind of now, the survive phase, where we are reacting to the crisis, we're stabilizing, we're trying to, in any way, shape, or form, hold on to business continuity. The next phase is the alive phase. And these 2 phases are with COVID. So essentially, though, what sets phase two apart from phase one is that we're learning how to adapt, right? So if you think about the previous slide with the phases, this is around phase two, phase three, according to that framework. But here, this is where we are going to define what the future looks like. There are those who are actually trying to get back to normal, and they're using everything in their power to do so. Nothing wrong with that. Except this is also the time where people are going to look for new solutions, new services, and start to gain the new skills, expertise, and make new technology investments to thrive as if we're not going back to normal. And that's a difference in mindset. Because once you have that difference in mindset, everything after that is how you play it out, right? So if you're doing these things, trying to get back to normal, and then you decide, you know what, maybe we're going to also start to look at other opportunities. We're going to operationalize. We're going to create new standards of excellence. We're going to build new digital business models, new products and services. We're going to be digital first. The trajectory starts to become radically different. It's a choice, and it's a choice you make. And it's also a scary choice. It's also about taking risk at a time when uncertainty has never been this high. But it really is what we do today that determines our place in the future of all of this. And for those who are bold enough, they actually define the future. And that's phase 3. That's phase 3, where it's innovation. It's the next normal. It is about developing new products and systems because we understand how changed and how we want to be part of that. So essentially, we need to learn who our customer is becoming. And this has been the crux of my research over the last several months. There's the who our customer is, and I get that, and we're going to go through that. But they're continuing to evolve. Just when I finish something new is happening in terms of what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they prefer, what they don't prefer. And look, add to the pandemic our political climate, and you just get a constant foundation of flux. So that's why discovery, the next generation of our business, the next generation of tourism, is all about discovery, not just now, but ongoing discovery. So let me explain to you, though, earlier on, the concept of digital Darwinism, how we got here, what the pandemic did, and what we need to do to move forward. Call it before COVID, or BC. We were already becoming more and more digital. And as you know, digital was already starting to disrupt a lot of our businesses, a lot of our ecosystems. I called this customer Generation C, where the C stood for connected. And I had found that this customer wanted things differently. They shopped differently. They researched differently. They made decisions differently. And they were looking for airlines, cruise ships, for agents, for partners, for solutions that operated the way that they operate. Those that didn't lost favor with them. This is why we saw so many technology brands come into the travel industry over the last 20 years in different waves, right? Web 1.0, Web 2.0, social media, mobile, and then it continues, especially now in the next phase of AI and machine learning. We started to see then how digital affected travel, how travel affected influence, how destinations were defined by that influence. We saw a new crop of elite travelers and elite consumers and influencers. We saw the world change specifically for them. I think this, of anything, is a metaphor for how Generation C was starting to change the world, whether we saw it or not. So if you think back to about the experience divide, if civil engineering, traffic engineering has to adapt how people move within a city so that they don't get hurt or get others hurt because they put a sidewalk like this in, or if you look at, was it the Netherlands that put lights from pedestrian crosswalks onto the street, onto the sidewalk, so that if you're on your phone and you're looking down, you see it's red so you don't kill yourself. These are things that demonstrate attempts at closing that experience divide metaphorically, right? So if you're a business and you see the world changing, you make these strides, you build these bridges, you make movements toward new consumerism, right? So this was already happening pre-COVID. And if you looked at the core pillars of new consumerism, I called us accidental narcissists, where impatience is a virtue. What we were demonstrating was that we wanted choice, personalized choice, not just choice. So that meant you had to know me. That meant that I wanted to only see solutions that were relevant to me and my behaviors that you would have known if you were engaging me online. I wanted things fast, things to be convenient, accurate, experiential, integrated, personalized, and also platform native. Platform native is a big one because even though we live in an omni-channel world, just because you have touch points everywhere doesn't necessarily mean it was platform native or, like number 6, integrated, holistic, experiential. So this is what happened. That experience divide in every single industry has been hit by all kinds of companies coming out of nowhere and then changing the game. So even though you're looking at some that are travel related, some that are not, every single one of these has affected your world because they've created the new standard for engagement, productization, for service, for experience. And then that, in their mind, became the standard. So anything less than that felt dated, or worst case, in times of disruption or terms of disruption, obsolete. So all of these things, right, were already pushing us on this trajectory where we needed to start thinking differently. But here's where things change. So COVID-19. So COVID-19 did a couple of things. One is it accelerated those digital first behaviors, so Generation C. In shelter in place, this customer already knew how to get food delivered, already knew how to get groceries delivered. They already were familiar with curbside pickup. They already knew how to communicate with everybody around the world, how to stay connected and informed. But it also brought behind them all of the laggards, everyone who wasn't digital first, maybe digital casual, who now had to learn overnight how to be digital in order to do all the things that they needed to do. And once they adopted those behaviors, it changed them just like it did for accidental narcissists, but it accelerated that transformation. But there was more. There was so much more that I actually called it Generation N, Generation Novel, because now your market just got bigger. It's now more digital first. They're now more egocentric, self centered, self interested in all look good ways, but they're also all open to new experiences, new opportunities for engagement. Then you add this whole idea of COVID-19, and this is where the new consumer becomes a source of inspiration beyond digital, right? Because this is going to humanize it a lot more. COVID-19 created a somatic marker, an emotional bookmark within each and every one of us, where we will never forget these times. We will never look at a roll of empty toilet paper the same way again. We'll never take for granted paper towels and sanitizer, all of the things that were just impossible to get early in this pandemic. We'll always remember these times, just like our grandparents or parents or great grandparents did in World War II. But more so, beyond just remembering, our values are changing right now. Our beliefs, our aspirations, they're all being reshaped because of this great reckoning, this great period of humility, this great period of self reflection, but also just general fear, anxiety, concern, worry, anger. So it's already starting to play out in new behavioral decision making. So, for example, uh, we already saw sort of conscious consumerism on the rise, but now it's making people question the things they buy, what success looks like. Uh, More so, it's starting to show that people are buying less stuff. They're moving. They're looking to live in different places. They're doing a lot of their personal goals that they never got around to, like going outside, working out, being with family. They're rethinking their relationship with brands. This is a really big deal. They are also not getting physically they're not looking for those physical experiences the way that they used to. In fact, most say that even as the world starts to open up, if they can, they'll still be digital first in many types of applications. So this is huge, right? You can see this. This is McKinsey data that shows that we experienced 10 years of e-commerce growth in 3 months. So yes, looking back to Generation C, this is all of that incline that we saw over the years. But now it's suddenly dramatic. And as you can see, once it becomes dramatic, you just accelerated permanent behavior change. Now, this is mind blowing. 75% of consumers have tried different stores, websites, or brands during this crisis. 75%. I don't have the exact causation, but I do have an idea and a hypothesis, which was people want to do business with businesses they love, but also in ways that they love, right? So that digital first mentality, going back to those pillars, right, creates preference, creates or drives loyalty, because 60% of consumers expect to integrate these new brands, these new retailers, these new sites into their post-COVID lives. I think the lesson in this slide is that loyalty is up for grabs. So then what do we do about it? Well, we have to appreciate that this new generation of customer is both digital but also emotional. They're more conscious, they're more reflective, they're more thoughtful about the decisions they make, because it's more of a I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like a matter of life and death. They are really thinking about the economy. They're thinking about the health of not only their health, but the health of their loved ones. So, knowing these things, right, what do we do? Well, I think that most organizations can benefit from creating a data culture, because I got to all of these findings by studying data, but not just studying data, asking different questions, using AI and machine learning to get to the patterns that I might not have found just by myself, but I had access to it. So that means you have to have access to it cross-functionally across the organization and every stage of that journey, that we're understanding who customers are. But then there's also solutions that we can buy into that give us data we don't have access to. Because if we can just adopt not only a data culture, but one of data-driven empathy, where we are looking explicitly not just for patterns, but for insights that reveal to us who people are and who they're becoming in every context, then that doesn't just lead to knowledge, that leads to the ability to improve the products and services that we offer, to innovate essentially for now with COVID and also post-COVID, to communicate differently, to engage people in ways that are much more intuitive and natural, and look, in these times, delightful. That's a huge differentiator. And human, that too is. And then also operationally, how do we operate? Becoming a data culture is already a huge shift in operations. That is the right path. So this is actually then where I think we need new skills, new roles, new models, operational models, more cross-functional models, because we have to move in real time across the journey, not just here, 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 right? Your travelers, your customers want what they want. And they also need to feel safe. They need to feel like you understand them along the way. So that means that we have to humanize the whole process of understanding who they are, how we engage them, and what we sell them. And then how that evolves as they evolve, because they're continuing to evolve. In fact, a lot of this data that I'm sharing with you, I've been sharing my observations in real time in a variety of industries, and I have to keep changing the stats because things keep changing that quickly, which is telling me now that we need to adopt not just journey mapping, but empathy mapping. And empathy mapping lets us know how people see and think, what they say, what they do, how they really how they feel. And that that alone should lead to insights then about every aspect of the travel experience that we're not even considering or didn't even have to consider before today. Because data drives digital empathy, data driven empathy. It should change how we think, how we talk, how we engage. It should add new metrics to how we define our own success. It should lead to new products and services at every stage of the journey. This is from recent Skift and McKinsey research that essentially encourages what I'm sharing, which is let's stop looking at customers as previous demographic segments or as they refer to as monoliths, uh, and start to look at them as microsegments. So in some of the research I was doing for Generation C, I had already discovered micro moments. I worked with Google on helping businesses, especially the travel industry, to understand those micro moments, but also the micro segmentation that had to happen with Generation C being a monolith in of itself, and then hyper segmenting within that because they were different. So now Generation N is a monolith. It is bigger than Generation C, but it's full of microsegments. And those microsegments are there for our identification. It just starts with different questions and access to richer real-time data sets, right? I mean, in this case, I don't know. I already reset my data meter in March, and it's already continuing to just evolve to the point where it's real time, AI powered and machine learning powered. But I guess the point is that this is a Control Alt Delete moment. I can't say it any other way. We can't move forward. We can't invent. We can't innovate if we're not willing to ask and answer different questions. And if we're not willing to think and work differently, if we're not willing to gain new skills and unlearn old skills and let go of old mindsets, that's gone. The days of yore are gone, right? We can cry for it later, but I'm also an optimist, and we can thrive. Just the insights that we can get are encouraging in of itself. If you look at these are just high level microsegments that I've uncovered with those questions that I shared with you earlier. Every single one of these could lead to new communication standards, could lead to new products and services, new destinations, new partnerships. It's all about learning and growing based on how we're looking, our process of discovery. Some of the things that I found looking at some of the other work, for example, Skift and McKinsey's of the world, Salesforce research, we see, as Ian Schrager put it, that there is pent up demand. It's starting to sort of come to life slowly all over the place differently. Uh, Travel is picking up where it's safe to do so. Safety now becomes part of the adventure. I wrote an article in Fast Company a few months ago that said every company now has to become a digital and a health company because people want to know that your experience, every aspect, every touch point, even those that you don't control, which is why the ecosystem and partnerships and cross company collaboration's critical, because safety has to be part of everything now. Not only do travelers want to travel, but they don't feel like they're in control. So they need help understanding their options. They need help understanding what's possible. What do they need to know? What do they need to do? What are the resources that they need access to? Because this can lead to new service processes, new products. There's also the working from anywhere. Look, this is going to be another 18 months at least, 24 months. So this bleisure, as it's called, or work-life blending, yes, it's delaying traditional vacation travel, but the vacation destination is becoming the destination, right? So I'm in Lake Tahoe. I have a lot of friends who are waiting for Hawaii to open up and plan on living there for the short term to work and enjoy life. This is the case all over the place. So that leads to new products and services as well. If you look at other opportunities, I mean, outdoor adventures are soaring. Uh, like I said, I am in Lake Tahoe. I would love to have a bicycle here. I just can't buy one. They're sold out everywhere. So you see bikes, boats, RVs, trailers, sprinters. I mean, sales of all these things are off the charts. So are rentals. Um, but also comfort and safety are starting to demonstrate their value over cost, right? And people used to try to shop for the best price or the best package. And look, that it's not like that's never going to come back. But in the meantime, though, contactless engagement has become a huge priority for travelers and retailers. So we have to consider all of these things beyond price throughout the entire travel journey. These are all insights and opportunities to start to create new products and services. Also, real-time sentiments demonstrate how people feel now and also how they might feel in a variety of scenarios. So stated preferences, surveys, not good enough anymore. They're not real time, they're not realistic, and they're not human. In fact, in some of our own research, we found that most customers say that the experience that the company provides is as important as its products and services. If you've ever heard me speak before, I've been saying this going back to X. Before that, what's the future of business? Before me, Joe Pine and Gilmore with the experience economy. So what then are the new experiences that we could take forward? Well, this is a new mindset. Add an apostrophe S to this. The customer's experience. Rethink the whole journey. Rethink each journey. Rethink who the customer is, and then we can reimagine the future. Some things aren't going to work. Some things are going to take off, but we're not going to know if we don't try. So there's the old way of like, hey, what about this idea? Okay. But also, how about data? How about data driven empathy? How about digital empathy? How about looking at opportunities that we just know because that's what data is telling us, because that's how we feel about new insights versus gut decisions, that we can make new investments and we can learn and grow and be agile, just like a startup. Test and learn, test and learn. Also invest in technology that gets us closer to customers. I found, for example, pre-COVID, 4 out of 5 estimated, 4 out of 5 digital transformations might fail. I also saw some research that show in the time of COVID that digital transformation is becoming more important. It's becoming accelerated, but it needs its why. Like Simon Sinek said, it needs its purpose. Uh, if you think about CRM, if you think about any aspect of customer engagement at whatever stage, sales, service, marketing, this is really about the R, right? It's about relationships. And it's about understanding that at the core of relationships is mutual benefits. I mean, that's just what a relationship is. You get something from knowing me, I get something from knowing you. We feel great, we learn together, we laugh together, whatever it is. So if we then think about CRM, or if we think about customer centricity, customer engagement, if we think about a customer experience, if we think about how we need to learn and get that insight to continue to deliver value, then we have to start acting like D2C brands, those brands that hyper focus on the experience divide, because that digital data-driven empathy is going to help us not only close that gap, but that's how we're going to innovate. So this is just a working concept, this idea of D2CRM. changes how we think about technology investments and how we use technology to get to these outcomes that customers love, travelers love, that we help them incrementally move forward to safer but also experiential outcomes, new products and services to get us there along the way. This is the core of digital transformation and innovation, relationship transformation. My colleague Henry King and I just published this article in ZDNet that introduces the importance and the concept of RTX, which I actually think is a core pillar for moving forward. It changes how we think, it changes our North Star, it changes our values, it changes our culture of how we operate. It changes then how we strive to create operational excellence, because we can't go forward the way we were working yesterday. We just can't. We've got to automate existing processes. We've got to automate next gen processes. We've got to look at uh, how do we establish digital operational excellence through new ways of working. That's both human, so models and processes and policies, but also technologically, right? What systems are we using? How are we cross collaborating? How are we getting data? How are we sharing data? How are we sharing insights? How are we experimenting? But then also digital business model innovation. This is a parallel track. They have to happen together. The only way forward is how we learn from what we observe, what we study, so that we can make decisions, test and learn in real time, right? It's just how do we think about tourism? How do we think about the experience people will want while we're in a time of COVID and then also post COVID? And how do we take those answers and productize them? How do we present them? How do we create new services around them? This is from the Skift and McKinsey research. Essentially, it's an opportunity for travel companies and destinations to work together to develop strategies, to develop products and services, to develop new offerings, uh, that build a sustainable tourism industry. But I'll go a step further: a resilient tourism industry, right? Because this isn't our last disruption. It just isn't. So we have to think about disruption proofing, future proofing, and essentially that's that slide: operational excellence, digital business model innovation. Those two things build up that resiliency, that agility, that adaptability, that just sense of constant curiosity and discovery and experimentation, because that's all this is really about. Now more than ever, it's not really as much a product as it is a service and an experience, right? If people are worried, they have every right to be. So how do we work with them in that? How do we rethink every aspect, not only of where they're traveling to and what they're doing while they're there, but how they got to us, right? What they do when they're there with this device. What do they do afterwards? Uh, Reimagining products, services, but also the journey itself. Every aspect is now up for reinvention, because this is happening in phase 2 to set up for phase 3 of the novel economy by the most innovative of companies. So I'm going to start to wrap, and then we're going to turn it over to you for Q&A. But I just want to remind you that there is a sense of purpose in all of this beyond just trying to stay alive and make a profit. Those are important, I get it. And these are hard times. But in my work, I found that getting these insights and reimagining the journey gives us an opportunity to show empathy, communicate purpose, align with their values, ensure their safety, create progressive, native, personalized experiences, add value, enhance their journey, build trust, learn and unlearn, uncover new ideas. So it's reimagining every aspect of this at every stage, looking at those micro segments and playing out scenarios where there can be problems against their expectations and where we can deliver that wow, because that's what it is, right? I'll just be blunt. These are dark times. They're chaotic times. It's like no matter where you turn, you just want to throw your arms up. But there's good in the world, and we can be that good. We have an opportunity to become the light that customers are seeking. People want to travel. They're going to travel in different phases. They're going to want different travel experiences that correlate to their evolution and how they feel about safety. They all have different aspirations, and that's going to evolve. But we can productize, we can we can learn and grow right now. And the more, as we saw earlier, that customer loyalty is up for grabs. The more that we can do that, I call it an ignite moment. That moment I have your attention and you have mine. This ignite moment is how we move forward together differently. So with that, Will, I'll turn it over to you for Q&A.
Brian, that was absolutely awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
My camera didn't come on there, so you're just hearing me. I'll try to get back to that. So Brian, I absolutely love the concept of when you say loyalty is up for grabs, and that leads to this whole idea of an industry reboot. One of the things that you've talked about a lot in the past is kind of this idea that we live in a post-truth era, and the importance of a trust economy. How do we, as a travel and tourism industry, bring that back?
Hey, Will, no problem. While I'm at it, I'll solve politics too. That's we have a trust dichotomy right now, and trust is more important than it's ever been. In fact, though, I would like to point out that Edelman has published a report every single year called the Trust Barometer, and it has shown us that we were on a trajectory to be where we are today, although it's just incredibly exponential. How do we? Well, that's trust, like anything, is earned. And I think the best way it's earned is not to be divisive, but to bring people together, even if you don't agree with their beliefs or politics, because we might share in aspirations. We might share in expectations or preferences. And so this idea of, I'm a digital anthropologist for a reason, right? I think, honestly, that digital anthropology, the social sciences, ethnography, digital ethnography, is long overdue in the C-suite. So when you understand people, it changes everything. It changes how you feel and think about them. It changes how you talk to someone, and it changes how you serve someone. So, for example, if we're changing how we talk to someone because we understand how someone might feel differently than we might have understood, that's one pillar back towards earning trust. This company gets me. I like this process. Every time I talk to them, I feel good, and it stands out, right? Especially in a time, even post trust dichotomy. Think about your cable company or your cell phone company, or any company where you tried to call customer service and just felt frustrated or angry, right? That's the standard for most engagement, right? You can only win by trying to get to know people, and the thing about that is it's there. It's there. I've been spending all my time studying this, and it's just changed my whole body of work and a lot of my thinking.
I think it's so important as we start trying to, as you say, learn who our customer is becoming. And again, we kind of are in that cycle. You mentioned this afternoon the kind of the emotional cost of that polarization of the news cycle and everything that's happening, and how that's changing. It is a dark time, and how that's changing our decision making. As we start to build our team kind of for the AD world, and starting to think about incorporating empathy, and how do you think, just as you're following consumer trends and kind of the last graph of trust and the opportunity in these micro segments, is that polarization paralyzing people's decision making, or are they on the business front rather more than maybe consumers?
Ooh, well, if you think about it this way, everything in someone's life right now, especially in the United States, is polarizing. I mean, you can't even go to Facebook and share something or just look at something without seeing something that's going to boil your blood, or even make you feel like a full loss of faith in humanity. Uh, so I think in company engagement, I don't know if company engagement or branding or marketing is polarizing, but it is distancing. So, for example, there's a great video on YouTube. Well, there's many great videos on YouTube, but in particular, one that talks about all. I think if you search "all brands sound the same," it's a series of commercials that are spliced together that show how every company at the dawn of COVID just talked the same. And I understand what you're going through. I understand your unique needs. It didn't say anything like microsegmentation or any demonstration of microsegmentation. It just was generic, right? And so that's the standard today. You can only win by starting to study and learn and more importantly, look, I know this is hard, to become cross-functional.
And you've said that the biggest challenge to digitization, which is kind of what you have to have that in order to be focused on microsegmentation. You've got to be focused on the data and understanding the data better and understanding to provide those personal connections in the human relationship. But I think you've said in the past that kind of some of the biggest challenges to digitization is the focusing on the digital rather than focusing on the reason why and the people themselves, why you're doing what you're doing in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Will. We saw that happen. I've been studying digital transformation, I think going back to 2013 officially, but I also studied corporate innovation for the same period, and both failed for the same reasons often because they weren't looking at that sense of purpose, that sense of why. They didn't have actually a vision. What does successful digital transformation look like? How are we going to measure success along the way? They weren't answering questions like, "Hey, what does it mean to be a digital first business?" And look, I get it because it wasn't driven by leadership in that way. Honestly, a lot of this is looked at as a cost center. It takes away from shareholder value. It's a line item, it's a series of line items, takes away from bottom line. I used to call it short-termism because it really locked us into quarter to quarter thinking about our future rather than what that future should look like. So really, what we need to do is kind of go through this whole deck and make it a playbook. And that playbook is about the humanization of who our customers becoming because and who they are in their microsegments, but also in their monoliths as that represents the market itself. And then in there are your points for digital transformation. For example, what's our mobile first customer journey for this customer? When they search, what do they find? When they find something, why is it relevant? What do they do next? Because I can tell you that if we even looked at a microsegmentation of, and we'll raise it up maybe a level where it's not just persona driven, it's behavior driven. I could tell you that our mobile journey is probably missing a whole bunch of touch points and probably not connected in a really intuitive way. So there's opportunities to even have the smallest of digital transformation strategies that are driven with purpose, because it doesn't have to be one monolithic digital transformation strategy. It's just a series of ways to improve customer engagement, to improve customer relationships, and also to innovate.
Innovation is mandatory in the AD, right?
Yeah, it is the only way to compete. And for those, yeah, the word innovation is one of those words that's used so often that maybe it becomes impersonal. So I just want to personalize it for those who are on here. Most times companies think they're being innovative because they're using new technology, because they're digitally transforming. But that isn't innovation. That's iteration. That's using new technology to do the same things better at scale, more efficiently. Innovation is actually looking for ways to create new value. So it's creating new value for how you work. It's creating new value for the experience you have. It's creating new value from a product you couldn't buy before, but now you have it and you can't live without it. That's creating new value. And when you get to both of them right, iteration and innovation, you unlock disruption where you're doing the new things that make the old things obsolete. So that's why we saw so much disruption in every single industry, especially retail, over the last couple decades, because they weren't actually creating new value. They were just trying to keep up with evolution.
And so the travel industry is coming off of 10 years of record growth. Everybody's been up. Everything's been great. But as a function of that, half of the destinations in the country have seen increased visitors, but actually lost market share. So does that, when you kind of have this reset to the AD time period, that puts a lot more pressure on tourism marketers to really compete and provide that experience, I would think, in a much more compelling way than kind of being able to rely on a rising tide.
Yeah, well, disruption is at its greatest potency when everybody's riding high, because it lulls you into a mindset of momentum, and that every momentum slows down, and that happens either because a competitor disrupts you, a startup disrupts you, or a pandemic disrupts you. But this is why you need, now more than ever, an infrastructure for resiliency. And also, by the way, look, real-time data and combined with AI machine learning is getting really good. So it's not just appreciating real-time analytics, but you can now start to get to predictive analytics, right? So we can start to tune ourselves with the right skill sets, the right expertise, the right models to start to see what's on the horizon as well. Because there's nothing to say that you can't succeed in these times of disruption. We just have to be operationalized for it.
So, Brian, one question, and I think I'd like to take this from two different perspectives. So we talked about the 5 stages of tourism recovery, and there's been a lot of questions like, all right, where do we think we are? I would imagine in Lake Tahoe, we'd be further along the path, or on the beaches in Florida, you're further along the path, or in the mountains. Anywhere in the mountains, people, they're getting out, and it's starting to feel like businesses coming back, and people are traveling and experiencing that. And then there's the counter to that is the cities. So it's going to be variable across kind of the recovery patterns of what kind of destinations we are. But do you think that that's always going to be kind of location specific, or is there a point at which kind of the entire country comes back into phase 2 or phase 3 or phase 4?
I've already started to see rapid evolution in local trips to further local trips to domestic trips, mostly by car. I have friends who are in Florida from California by car, New York to San Francisco by car, taking the old Route 66, things that weren't on their travel plans, but because the things were so pent up, that they got there. A lot of it started with local parks, then it moved to national parks. So the point is that it's moving, and we can start to see, what are some of those trends that are starting to unfold. And look, winter's coming up as well, right? So that's going to change the dynamic all over again. I think that's why we need a data culture, to be honest with you. And having a data culture gets us not into just what we need to do now, but what's next. It's called scenario planning, right? It's how we start to think about what are some of the likely scenarios for winter based on a with COVID time frame. And if you use these summer models, local, further local, domestic, we can start thinking about some partnerships, products, solutions, and services to sell that we know people are going to want to buy, as long as safety is an underlying foundation.
That's awesome. Well, Brian, I know you committed an hour to the e-tourism crowd, and I don't think we could have gotten any more out of that hour. So thank you so much for the incredible insight, the ideas, the guidance, really inspirational. And I do think that we'll all be looking at the BC and the AD and be talking about that for the rest of our lives. There's no doubt about that. So again, I'd just like to, on behalf of all of us at eTourism Summit and all the folks from around the country that are here with us today, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Lori Joe. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope that you found this valuable. If you need anything, I'm at Brian Solis on the social medias, and I will see you online soon.
Thanks again, Brian. That was an awesome day, and please make sure to join us again tomorrow, same time, same place, for the Sharpening the Tools in Your Toolbox with Leroy Bridges from Visit St. Pete Clearwater, Matt Clement, newly of Madden Media, Melissa Gogol with Visit Phoenix, and Jeff Robinson from Visit Indy. So have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.